Whether you're picking and grinning or just grinning, grab a drink, pull up a seat. It's time for Roots Music Rambling. Turn it up. I don't know what the fuck we're doing.
We're going to talk about our favorites.
Right. All right. So, Frank,
that's me.
We've talked about a lot of different our favorite artists, our favorite albums, etc. Because of our guest, which we'll talk about in a little bit, and what we're going to talk about in this particular episode of Roots Music Rambler, I would like to know who are your, let's say, top 5 songwriters, like people who, when you, and they don't have to necessarily be the people who perform. It can be just writers, and you're like, who wrote that song? Those lyrics are amazing. Like, that really spoke to me, or whatever. I want to know who your favorite songwriters are. And while you're listing yours, I'm going to come up with mine.
Oh, you get time to prep. I don't. Okay. All right. Well, I have to say my first number one, because it's the first singer-songwriter that really, like you said, spoke to me. And it was at a very young age. And I've talked about this on previous episodes also. It has to be Bruce Springsteen. He was my gateway when I was 10 years old to the world of singer-songwriters. Up to that point in my life, it was just pop music, right? Or whatever my parents had on it at home. But then Born in the USA came out, and I realized songs are like stories, right? Each one is like a little story. And that's how it all started for me. So definitely got to go with the boss for number one. Jason Isbell, of course. I mean, the guy can, write his face off. Who else? Let's see. Who else really speaks to me? You know who I think is a really good songwriter in a clever kind of way is Chris Stapleton. And I know he's written a lot of songs for a bunch of other artists. But he's got a talent for like turning a phrase and taking like a mundane situation, like a daily event, and explaining it. Like his one song, oh shoot. See, I was on the spot, so I didn't have time to prepare. But the one song, the one where she burns his guitar or hawks his guitar or something, and
nobody to blame.
Nobody to blame, right? And I'm like, yes, this is clever,
Yep.
He's not like someone that I listen to constantly, but he's extremely talented. There's no denying. Marcus Mumford, I mean, the man, like he speaks to my soul.
Okay.
And so is that 4? I feel like it's all dudes.
It's all dudes.
Can I drop the obvious then?
Yeah, you sure can.
All right. Lucinda Williams.
Yep. That's what I thought you were going to go there.
Okay. Yeah. She's a queen. And I have to make it a point to see her perform one of these days soon. But she is, and we'll talk about this some more later, but she has a way of making the simplest things. She has a way of turning it into poetry.
Mm-hmm. I like that a lot.
So that's my list.
Stuff. That's some good stuff. That's a good list right there. I like that.
And it's in no way comprehensive.
Well, and again, this is off the top of our heads, and this is top 5, and so we could think of 100 others probably to throw in here for all this. I would easily put Isbell and Stapleton on my lists. I'm going to do 5 different ones, but those two are some of my favorites. I think I always have to start with the first person that I ever really understood. This guy is the songwriter. Like, he writes the lyrics that people sing, and that's John Prine. And I know that's a common answer for a lot of people, but it's a common answer for a real good reason, because he wrote some amazing music in the late 60s, early 70s into the 80s, and continued on, and obviously until he passed away, and he died of COVID, unfortunately, 6 years ago now. But John Prine's music was the first time I ever listened to something and said, "That sounds like my life." And that was that was a very early young age too, because the first time I ever heard or saw John Prine, I was probably 9 or 10 years old.
Mhm.
By the time I was 11 or 12, I was listening to John Prine records pretty regularly and thought, "Man, he's writing about stuff that I feel or I think or things that I've experienced." And while our Sam Stone was probably the first song that I ever heard, and my dad was not a Vietnam vet. My dad was not, addicted to a drug or anything like that, but my experience with my father was certainly one where his actions and whatnot disrupted the family and was rather traumatic, and so I felt that trauma even though they weren't exactly the same.
Yeah.
And at a young age, I realized he's writing about my experience. Even though the details are different, it's the same feeling, it's the same emotion. And so John Prine's number 1 for me for that reason. He was the first person I really identified as a songwriter. Have to put Hayes Carll on my list. Multiple reasons. He writes some really, really beautiful songs. But I don't know that there's a better song ever written than She Left Me for Jesus. It's so good and so clever and so funny and so horrifically offensive to people who are really ultra religious that it just makes me giggle. I love it. It's so good. So I'll throw that out there. The next person I have on my list is Emily Scott Robinson. And I regret that it took me until a year ago to really know who she was.
Mm.
But this last record, Appalachia, which I just framed and put on the wall back over there, by the way.
Nice.
The last record she had, Appalachia, I just fell in love with right out of the gate, and I've gone back and listened to her full catalog, and she's just a beautiful songwriter. The fact that she's on Old Boy Records is, not a coincidence. She's in very much in that John Prine mold. So I've got her on my list. Next up is Paul Overstreet. And Paul Overstreet is probably someone who's known more in the music business as a songwriter than he is a performer, even though he's had a solo career and he's had several hit songs on country radio and all that kind of stuff. But he wrote the song Beautiful Stranger, which was made popular by Marcus King. He's written a lot of really cool country hits over the years, going back to the 80s. And he's in that Hayes Carll mode. Every now and then he'll write one that's just silly, clever, funny. And those are the kind of songwriters that I gravitate to. And then the last person I've got on my list, my number 5, I'm gonna do an honorable mention too. But my 5th one is a guy because I cannot not leave I can't say this guy's name. I cannot not mention this guy for my honorable mention. But let me get to the number 5. Number 5, I've mentioned him on the show once or twice before. I'd love to get him on the show at some point. His name is David Lamott. He has been a singer-songwriter, traveling musician, but also like a motivational speaker and an author and all kinds of other things for a few decades now. I first saw him in Birmingham, Alabama, probably in 2002 or 3.
Oh,
At
wow.
at the upstairs like cafe of a bookstore. Him and a guitar. And he sang several songs that I really liked, but this one song, and you got to remember back in that day, I was traveling nonstop with sports teams. I worked in college athletics. I was on the road all the time. And he has a song called Northbound. He sang that song that night, and then I talked to him afterwards, and he said, "It's funny that you should come up and ask me about that song because I don't really play that song very often. I might play it 1 in every 10 shows. So it's kind of random that you heard it in the first place."
Mm.
And I just said, "Dude, that song just described my entire experience because the whole song is about being a traveling musician and constantly being on the road and never being home and never feeling like you can stay one place for too long because, you'll get anxious or uncomfortable and you'll have to flee. You'll run away from the things that are safe in the world and whatnot." And that's kind of what you feel like when you're traveling nonstop. I've never been a traveling musician, but for 9 months of the year, for 15 years, I traveled 3 or 4 days a week,
Yeah.
and it wears you out. And so there's a line in that song that says, "It feels like I spend so much time leaving and not enough time coming home." And I just was like, holy shit, that's my life. And so I love his catalog of work. He's got a lot of really, really great songs. He even wrote a kids album at one time called the SS Bathtub, which
Oh,
the songs were really clever and cool. But
aw, that sounds cute.
so David Lamotte, and David, I'm gonna reach out. I think I've tried to reach out to him before, and I don't know if I got through or whatever. But I want to get him on the show at some point. So,
Okay.
and my honorable mention is Nick Jamerson.
Okay.
And I mean, you can't listen to his latest album, The Narrow Way, I think is the name of it. That the song Sunday Dinners again is like, holy shit, he just described my childhood.
Yeah.
And when someone writes something that hits you that hard, it's hard not to let go of that. And Nick Jamerson's, obviously becoming, if not already, he's becoming legendary in Eastern Kentucky. For those of you who don't recognize the name, he's one of the co-founders and members of Sunday Best. Those are my 5, and those are all pretty good. I think yours are fantastic too. So that's a good list. I
And
like it.
as you're giving your list, I'm thinking about all the other ones that I could have mentioned and didn't.
Yeah,
So I mean, we could do this for hours.
sure.
I will say though, I'm surprised Tyler Childers was not on your list.
That's he's definitely going to be next in line. But I mean, I could sit here and go, well, Dolly Parton should be on there, and
Right.
there's just so many.
And I didn't
great.
say Jay Farrar.
That's true. That's very true.
Like what was I thinking?
Yeah, and
So-
I'm glad you didn't. I'm glad you didn't want to say Jeff Tweedy, but that's just me.
Well,
Sorry, Jeff.
we love you,
writes
Jeff.
he writes perfectly fine songs. His style's just not my style. It's okay.
Not
There's nothing wrong with
anymore. And for those of you who don't know, you can go far back into our catalog and find our episode, Does Wilco Suck?
that. Does Wilco suck? Yes, we have an episode. We didn't have a guest. We just talked about whether or not Wilco sucked. So you can go back in the archives and enjoy all of that wonderful banter.
Oh, good time.
Oh, goodness gracious. Welcome to Roots Music Rambler. She's Frank.
And he's Falls.
And we're rambling on through the stories behind the music we love.
And today on the show, we are talking with Avery Hellman, known artistically as Ismay. So Avery is originally from the Bay Area. Avery's a singer-songwriter whose new album, Half Truth, is set to be released on June 12th of this year. Avery's also a rancher, a record label founder, and a documentary filmmaker.
Yeah, that resume is rather impressive, as is their lineage. Avery is the grandchild of Warren Hellman, founder of the legendary Hardly Strictly Bluegrass Festival. Needless to say, Avery has been surrounded by incredible music and talented artists from a very early age. It's not surprising that Avery has chosen to continue their grandfather's musical legacy.
And yet, despite Avery's family history and personal accomplishments, they went through a period of self-doubt, unsure of whether they had enough to offer as an artist, whether it was worth continuing a career in music. And that prompted Avery to embark on a road trip, a journey of self-discovery, or of finding oneself through understanding somebody else. And who is that somebody else? It's none other than Lucinda Williams.
That's right. Lucinda Williams is Avery's musical hero, and in an attempt to determine their own artistic identity, Avery set out on a road trip through the American South to trace Lucinda's roots and examine her early life in music. The journey took Avery to Austin and Houston, Texas, Jackson, Mississippi, and of course, Nashville, Tennessee. Along the way, Avery spent time with other icons like Buddy Miller and Mary Gauthier, and ultimately Lucinda herself.
I know. And okay, that I love Lucinda and have admired her for decades now, So when I first learned about this documentary, I knew it was a must-see. And I will tell you, it's a gorgeous film. And I know you've watched it too. So
Yep.
while I loved learning more about Lucinda's early years in music, I also appreciated Avery's honesty and vulnerability. And no matter which path each of us follows, I think we all can relate to Avery's struggle and journey in some way.
Absolutely. We've got a lot to discuss in this episode, so let's go ahead and take a break here for some messages from our fine sponsors that make this show possible. When we come back, we will be joined by Avery Hellman of Ismay. Don't go away. This is Roots Music Rambling.
stepped outside my door, worried about the lightning today. Walked down to the barn and I stacked up my arms full of hay, as I do in the evening time.
Welcome back to Roots Music Rambler. That very good song there is The Golden Palomino from our guest today, Avery Hellman of Ismay, off their 2024 album, Desert Pavement. Avery, we're very honored to have you on the show. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good, you know? We're just kinda getting out of the snow season up here, so I'm halfway between winter and summer.
Oh, nice. Well, I live in Kentucky, so we're on winter number 7, and spring number 3 will be tomorrow, and then there will be another winter, and then summer maybe for a week. So, yeah, we're a little schizophrenic when it comes to weather around here.
And here in Chicago, I mean, last week I had the AC running for a couple days and then switched it over to the heat. So, you know, we're familiar with how that works. So Avery, in the intro for this episode, we touched upon all of the roles that you fill, and we certainly want to discuss each of them with you some more. So we'd like to start though with the documentary Finding Lucinda. So now anyone who has listened to our show knows that I adore Lucinda Williams and have for a few decades. And we definitely understand why you consider Lucinda to be your musical hero. So what was it about Lucinda that first drew you in?
So I started listening to Lucinda Williams when I was just a kid. My mom had really good music taste, and in the late '90s, she used to play Tom Waits and Lucinda Williams and Lyle Lovett for us, and I have a vague, some vague memories of singing along to her music. I specifically remember Concrete and Barbed Wire. So she was kind of around as I was growing up. And really the reason I got so into her was actually kind of a coincidence. I mean, I listen to a lot of different artists. I love a lot of different artists, but when I was about 22, 23, my dad decided to start a Lucinda Williams tribute band. He had picked up the drums a couple years prior. I had started being a singer-songwriter, and it was a good opportunity for us to spend time together. And so we'd play these 3-hour bar gigs learning song after song. So I knew so many of her songs. And I fell more in love with it then. And I came to understand the brilliance of her work across the decades, essentially.
Nice. Speaking of fathers, I know in the film you talk about Lucinda's songwriting being all about simplicity and truth, and we certainly agree that's a perfect description. For those that don't know, Lucinda Williams's father is what I was trying to say. He was an accomplished poet and was an extraordinary influence on her. And I believe that encouraged you to learn to write poetry. Tell us about that whole experience and how does one exactly learn to write poetry?
See, that's a great question. Most poets would tell you that it's a bad idea to try to learn to write poetry. I don't know. But yeah, Lucinda's history is really, really interesting. She did not have a typical upbringing at all. Her father, when she was born, was really, her family was struggling when she was born. Her father was just starting to get jobs. He was actually like a refrigerator salesman and a book salesman, but he had gotten a job as a professor, as a scientist. And that was because he was told that he wasn't any good at writing in school. He took an aptitude test and it said, "You suck at writing." And he was like, "Well, I guess guess I can't be a writer even though I love it." But in spite of that, he wrote poems for years and years. And then finally, strangely enough, his friendship with Flannery O'Connor allowed him to have his first gig as a writing professor. And so, he kind of grew as a writer as Lucinda was in her own childhood and surrounded himself with a very artistic community. Charles Bukowski was in his milieu, just incredible writers, especially Southern writers. Pablo Neruda. I mean, the list goes on and on. And so I realized through understanding Lucinda's childhood specifically how much being around writers and writers who demonstrated what the writing process is to her. That's how she grew up. I mean, she grew up going to conferences, listening to writers speak to their classes when she was just a teenager. And so she understood the writing process in a way that most of us don't encounter until we're in college. And that really inspired me to understand writing better to become a better songwriter.
That is pretty impressive, and you said that learning to write poetry was a huge shift for you, and the experience led to your writing, your upcoming album, Half Truth. So what was the process like for you in turning those poems that you wrote into songs?
So I got into poetry by taking some classes. I had taken, poetry in high school and I was completely confused by what the heck any of these things meant. I just remember getting a bad grade and feeling stupid because I didn't get poetry, right? And so I think something happened to me developmentally as an adult where I started to understand more poems and to comprehend the process. And then I took classes. So I took online courses because I live in the middle of nowhere. I can't go to a school and learn how to write poems, but I took these classes and just got some instruction. And at the same time, I was also participating in this event called the National Cowboy Poetry Gathering. I was exposed to poets and allowed to read a few poems at my shows. And so I was just writing poems. And the cool thing about it is when you write a poem versus a song, there's so many more opportunities. You don't have to rhyme, you don't have to fit it in the rhythm. And so you're allowed to expand your vocabulary, the way you structure sentences. And so I kind of allowed the exploration to happen. I wrote a bunch of poems. And then the poems that to me matched a melody that I had written, I merged them together and rewrote a couple of those poems into songs. So it really flipped on its head my writing process as a singer songwriter.
Very nice. So I'm curious, and for those, just for context for you and for the people watching or listening, I just finished the movie about a half an hour, 45 minutes ago. So it's really fresh on my mind, and I loved it, by the way. Um, so Finding Lucinda, when you hear that as a fan, especially if you're a fan of Lucinda, you're like, oh my goodness, this is going to be all about Lucinda Williams. And I think people probably conclude pretty quickly it's really not about Lucinda Williams all that much at all. It's really more about your journey to, I'm assuming, find a part of yourself. Is that how you would characterize it? And what did you learn from that process?
Yeah, I would say it's sort of a classic Odyssey story, a classic hero's journey. I went out basically on a road trip to try to uncover Lucinda's origins. I tried to not just do like an overview of where was she born and then where did she go to college. I was trying to understand like what was her mentality when she was my age? What did she think when she first started playing shows? Who was there to support her? And through that, I tried to in the film and the project, I tried to dig deeper than just, like, the surface level of the facts. I tried to dig into what does it mean to be an artist? What is the psychological burdens that we take on as artists? And look to Lucinda's story as a way to understand that a lot better. And so, yeah, it's not necessarily a traditional documentary. I wouldn't have been allowed to make that if I wanted to, most likely. But, it's sort of it's a quest, and I want people to see that, like, myself as a character in the movie and even Lucinda, like, I'm a stand-in for you. If you're a songwriter or someone who loves art, like, I'm you. I'm your experience, and I hope that people see that and can relate to that experience through what I went through and the ups and downs I had to endure.
That really gives a tremendous perspective. I love that explanation. And if I could ask another question, about Lucinda, what do you understand about her now that you didn't before? Or, like, before you started the project and started filming?
I definitely understand her so much better, and it took, 6 years to really get her as I do now. I think the biggest thing that I understood is that Lucinda isn't necessarily the typical singer-songwriter because she's a writer. She's not just like a songwriter, she's a writer, and that's I think when people listen to their music, they love the lyrics, they love where it takes them, but you don't necessarily, like, understand why, and you don't need to understand why. I just really wanted to dig into that, and the way she writes songs is of a high literary art form. It's really interesting, like, when she came to understand she wanted to be a singer-songwriter was when she heard Bob Dylan. And many people say, including I believe she said this too, but he matched literary songwriting with folk music. And that was
Yep.
a huge innovation, and he did it really well. And so I think that she matched literary lyricism with country music in a way very few other people have been able to do.
Very nice. I loved the I don't wanna set up any spoilers for anybody, of course, but I love the fact that there was an analogy presented by a significant character in the story toward the end that looked at you and said, "You've got everything you need." It's like Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz, just click those heels and you're going home. You've got it, you just didn't know it. And that was just a really, I think, perfect way to wrap that all up at the end, so nice stuff. I loved it. This seems like a very good time for us to take a break and grab some refills. When we come back, we want to talk more with Avery Hellman about the other projects that she's involved in. Of course, she's got a new album coming out. We'll talk a little bit more about Finding Lucinda as well. But let's go out with a live version of Lucinda's I Lost It by Ismay, accompanied by Buddy Miller. Don't go away. This is Roots Music Round.
I think I lost it. Let me know if you come across it. Let me know if I let it fall along a back road somewhere. Money can't replace it. No memory can erase it. And I know I'm never gonna find another one to compare. Give me some love to fill me up. Give me some time. Give me some stuff. Give me some. She is supposed to wave an American flag. I imagine her on the rodeo track. She is standing here like a wild stag.
Welcome back to Roots Music Rambler. That is American Flag by Ismay, the title track off of their upcoming album, one that has a bit of a different sound than previous releases. It is representative of the other tracks in the rest of the album, though, which is set to be released on June 12th, I do believe. Is that all accurate there, Miss Avery?
Oh, yeah, you nailed it.
Cool. I like it when I have the facts right. So the facts are the facts.
The facts are the facts, ma'am, just the facts. Okay, and then the new album will be on Fossil Records, which you started with another friend of the show, Margot Silker. And your reason for starting Fossil Records was, in quote, to capture the expression drawn from seasons of work on ranches and in rural outposts. And it also features artists from the American West. So, what was the impetus for such a project, and why is it so important to you?
So Margot and I have known each other over many years, and funny enough, we were both working on ranches in Sonoma County at the same time, playing music before we became friends. And we had both grown up in the Bay Area, but had this interest in kind of venturing beyond those borders. And I was able to watch Margot's career go from, very few people knowing who she was, me loving her work, especially her voice and her writing, and then get to reach a wider audience. And it was extremely fun to see that happen with a friend of mine because I was like, I was right all along, you guys. Artists were always like, I know it's good, and the public doesn't get it yet. And it's like, finally, it worked out. So I was friends with her for a long time, and also we became better friends because we were both part of the Cowboy Poetry Gathering in Elko, Nevada. It's actually has a lot of music and a lot of art forms that are folk art from rural American West, which is kind of a specific thing. And so we had this shared language, we had this shared landscape, this shared culture that I think a lot of people participate in, but maybe is a little bit away from what the mainstream might see. And we both are really passionate about writing. We love reading books, we love reading poetry, and we're passionate about writing songs that reflect the way that we live in, the modern day and age. Except we live in these sort of rural outposts, so to speak. And so I think, our passion for creating this project, this collective record label together is because we love each other's music, of course, but also because we feel like big part of being an artist is supporting other people and yourself to create almost like they call it a vibe nowadays. which is kind of sad, but whatever. It's a vibe, you know? It's a quilt, it's whatever, it's a fabric, it's a vibe, and we're just on the same page without having to necessarily say it, and it's exciting to be able to not only, share our recorded music with people, but a big part of what both of us do is perform live and create communities, in-person communities, in these rural outposts in particular, and we're passionate about making sure that the art that we make is, reaching people because those people have wonderful perspectives, not only to share and express themselves, but also to like receive the art that we create.
Very nice. All right, so new album is coming. By the time this airs, I don't think it'll quite be out, but it'll be one that you can probably pre-order or bookmark or whatever. Tell us about the new album. I mean, obviously this is post, finding yourself through finding Lucinda. So tell us about the new album. What can people expect from that?
Yeah, I mean, the whole Finding Lucinda experience, tracing Lucinda Williams' roots, certainly informed the type of music that I make and informed the ways that it's infused with poetry is what I'm going for. And to me, what I think Lucinda did that I am trying to do as an artist is not worry too much about, sound in the right way or like doing the thing that you're supposed to do that's like palatable. That's not really the goal. The goal is to convey this poetry and put music to it and find the music that fits um, what you're going for in the moment, I guess. And I think when I was working on my plans to make this album, I've been writing songs, writing poetry, and I had a really particular thing in mind with the ways I wanted the bass and the drums to sound. I know it sounds really specific, annoyingly so, but there is a certain way I wanted those elements to sound. And also, one of the things that I've learned to do over the years as an artist is there's so many subtle ways you can allow a song to develop. Of course, you can just do a classic person with a guitar and, verse, chorus, verse, bridge, out, whatever. But I'm really passionate about bringing in new tonality in the progress of a song in order to keep it interesting to listen to.
Hmm.
And then additionally, like wanting it to sound somewhat related to the live music that I create. I mean, one of the gifts of the way that I've developed as an artist is that I came up in like the bluegrass world. And in the bluegrass world, you better be able to play it live. It's not a recorded, I mean it
Mm-mm.
is, but it's really about your ability to sing it and play it. You cannot BS it. That's not the way it goes. And so with that background, I have confidence to go into the recording studio and be like, I can do a lot of this live. I can allow there to be small mistakes because I can land the song. And so I wanted all those elements to come together. And so I found this guy, Sam Cohen, who lives in upstate New York, who's a wonderful record producer. And he produced an album by this guy, Kevin Morby, had this really fantastic album. This is a photograph. And I loved the sound of what they created. And so I just reached out to him. I was like, really crossing my fingers, like, don't reject me. Don't say no. Don't like, oh God, it's so scary. This is a thing that I learned through Finding Lucinda that a lot of people don't understand about artists is like, you are always vulnerable. You're always rejected, no matter how successful you are. Actually, the higher you go, the more vulnerable you get
Yep.
because you're reaching. And I was reaching with this producer because I know how many fantastic projects he's worked on. But fortunately, he said yes. And so I went up to his studio at his house and had a great time.
No, that's sound. It's kind of funny. You're talking about the sounds and the tonality. I'm an old radio guy, and back in the day when I first learned radio, or learned to be in radio, it was all about putting together bits and using sound effects and whatnot. This is years ago. Radio's a little different now, if anybody's still listening to most of it, anyway. But uh, I remember the first time I put on an album, and there's a lot of like Led Zeppelin albums and whatnot that have this like sound. Pink Floyd is amazing with soundscapes and whatnot. But speaking of Led Zeppelin, I don't know if this is relevant or resonates with anyone, but I want to share it. So bear with me. John Bonham's son, Jason, his first commercial effort as a professional musician was a band called Bonham. They came out in the late 80s, early 90s. And they had an album. I actually have the record because it's just fantastic. And the whole thing is this wonderful soundscape. It's like a movie um, soundtrack with environmental sounds and effects and all sorts of whatnot going through between songs. And it's just one of those things that compels you. And so when you said, I want to bring in tonalities and whatnot in and introduce them into songs to keep the songs interesting, that's the first thing that popped into my mind, because that's one of those records you put on and you don't walk away from it. You're like, I have to pay attention to everything that's coming out of the speakers at this point. And if you haven't heard that album, I would highly recommend it, even if rock is not necessarily your genre, because it's a fantastic experience, which is what you're going for, I think, right?
Yeah, that's so interesting. I love you hearing you talk about that story because I think that just goes to show that there's something you can hear in what I'm describing that can only be, heard in another record, but it takes a specific type of producer or artist to understand how to do that. And it's really, really interesting art form. And I think the more that I make records, the more subtle choices. Like I'm thinking back when I made my last record, Desert Pavement, I worked with Andrew Marlin, who's known for Watch House as his band. And I learned so much from him in just 5 days of making that record. I learned about how how you can do an instrumental section differently. I learned about how you don't have to do things perfectly. It's more important to do them interesting and move on. Like the most fascinating moment of making that album with Andrew for me was he decided to do these background vocals, these really weird little things are kind of Beatlesy. And we recorded it through a Leslie. And the engineer's like, Andrew, do you want to just record it straight and we'll add the Leslie later in case we don't want it? He's like, no. And so we didn't even record an unlesleyed version. There was only that. And then he just did it once. They're like, well, do you want to record it again in case it's a little pitchy? He's like, no, I want to move on. And I think there's something, it's different with every process, but that's just to say that every album, listening or watching somebody make it, with people who are really good, you can learn so much about these subtle little ways that you change your process to make it compelling. And I'm learning every time. And with this album, I'm definitely, have learned a lot from Sam as well.
Nice.
I'm just sitting here listening to you two, and I'm absolutely fascinated. Okay, so can I ask, though, just pretty please, with a cherry on top, is there any possibility of an Avery Margot collaboration?
Oh, I would love that. I know we've been talking, we've sang a few songs together here and there. It's funny, she and I are such different singers that I think it's really cool, but it takes a little bit of time, I think, for us to feel where we fit together, which is gonna be really fun. And we have some ideas, the idea we're most excited about is doing a little tour in rural Nevada. There's all these really cool spaces, but these towns only have 100, 200 people. And
Yeah.
so my dream is to one day go out on a little tour and maybe we'll collaborate on some songs and some old folk cowboy songs and then record it in these, little towns.
Yeah.
That's the dream. It'd be fun, right?
That would be fun. As long as Louisville, Kentucky is one of your little towns, yes.
I love that. I love Kentucky. I was just there actually in Pine Mountain Settlement School. Have you guys ever been there? Oh,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
so beautiful.
Yeah,
I
that's
I'm
not
not
too
I'm not a Kentuckian. I'll defer to Jason. Yeah, I'm not sure what
that's
that is.
that's not too awfully far from actually where I was raised. I grew up in Pikeville, Kentucky, which is probably about an hour or so from the settlement school, and I was at the settlement school a couple of times when I was younger. My mother went there for some things and dragged me along, so I know exactly where you're talking about. So, yeah,
Wow, that's super interesting. Well, we got to talk offline about that one of these
very
days.
cool. Yeah, and there's down in that part of the state, there's a lot of great talent coming out because that's really close to the Laurel Cove Music Festival. There's another one coming up, Singing in the Woods, or I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but there's a bunch of music festivals popping up in campground areas where 500 people go up and head of holler and sit around and play music and sing and stuff. And I'm not a camper, but those are really fascinating things with a lot of great talent. So yeah, it's a good
Hmm.
part of the country for some good music. So
We owe a lot to that region for our heritage of American music, and I think it's something I'm ever more interested in learning about.
Awesome. So, you've got a new album coming. We've touched on that. You got a new record label, with Margot. We touched on that. Uh, I'm curious, since one of the main reasons we talked to you was, the film Finding Lucinda, any more movies in the future?
I love, I love, I like the head shaking from Francesca. This is great. Yeah, you know that making movies, everyone's like, don't do it. Um, I would say I do have some excitement around some more, I actually, interestingly enough, about telling stories about the heritage, of American folk music, um, Pine Mountain Settlement School, the history of the Lomaxes and all that. I do have some interest in that. I don't think I'll ever do another movie. It's a challenging realm, and I gotta say, like, it's a subculture that's unto its own. It's a different type of person makes movies than makes music, and it's cool, but I can't keep up. There's like celebrities and stuff who make movies. I don't want to be like that.
Yeah, but the best ones are when I would argue, and I'm a documentary movie guy. I love documentaries. I would argue the best films, particularly documentary films, are the ones like Finding Lucinda that are from someone who just has this like obsession, this focal point, and they just dive in head first and go for it. And you learn so much. Even like, for instance, I didn't learn as much about Lucinda Williams as I expected on the front end. I learned much more about you and the creative process and being an artist, which I'm not. And that's the whole reason I'm in this podcast world, is because I'm trying to, kind of absorb through osmosis some creative energy or something from the people we talk to. And so those are the best films, the ones that you come away with something that you didn't expect, but something probably deeper and more rich. Those are the best films. And so you don't have to be, whatever, whatever the dude's name is that's doing all the documentary films now.
Ken
The
Burns?
celebrity no, not
Oh,
Ken Burns. You don't have to be backed by, all the George Clooney's and stuff of the world to be able to make a good movie. Your movie was fantastic. I really enjoyed the hell out of it. So I hope you do more.
Well, thanks. I mean, it's a cool process, and I think the greatest thing, the gift from making that movie is I learned so much more about music and art and writing than I would have any other way.
very good. Very good. And we did talk in the open about how, even though, like Jason said, we're not artists, right? But there was something about the way you presented, your own self-doubt and everything that anybody can relate to, right? So we I can speak for myself. I certainly appreciate that as well. And if I could ask one more question about Lucinda and the film, what was the most valuable lesson or piece of advice that you learned from the whole experience, whether it came from Lucinda herself or the other artists that you met with along the way? What was your greatest takeaway?
There was a moment when I was talking to Mary Gaucher, and we were in the Station Inn in Nashville, and she goes, "You ever hear somebody talking about how they want to get to the next level? There are no levels. What do you think you get at the top? Puppies and butterflies and $100 bills." And it
Yes.
was very astute, and she's a brilliant, thoughtful, very intelligent person and artist. And I think what she helped me understand is that you're not going to get to a level where you don't have self-doubt,
Hmm?
as an artist. That's just not how it works. A lot of people get to another level and they can protect themselves more, or they can get benefits, which is can be nice. But I think this idea that you have to know you're good to share your art, that's just not how it works. And I
No.
learned that from Mary for sure. And a lot of people think like, this is what I'll say. Confidence is not proportionate to ability, okay? Like, it's a complicated relationship. There's no mathematical graph between confidence and ability in art. That doesn't mean that you can't work on your confidence, you can't work on your art. But I see so many incredibly talented people that are just too scared to even sing their song for one person, and they make
Mhm.
the most beautiful work. And I guess the final takeaway I have from that is that, you know, with this whole there are no levels idea, I've come to understand that there's not like a destination when you're an artist. You have to understand that the process of writing a song or of playing a show in that moment is beautiful unto itself. You can't be like, well, once I play the Grand Ole Opry, it'll all make sense. That's just not how it works. You have to be committed to the process in every way because that's all you have. That's all we have. We don't have a thing we can cling to. There's no like golden pair of, gloves that we're going to get put on our hands and that everyone can see. You always have the ability and the gift of being able to write a song or play music for somebody. And that's what we can all share.
That's fantastic. Well, Avery, we love your film. And we're looking very much forward to the new album. Please tell the listeners and viewers where they can find you and your work across them their interwebs.
Absolutely. Well, I play under the name Ismay. It's spelled Ismay, and I've got a website, ismaymusic.com, and I'm just at Ismay Music. You can just look it up. And my new album's called Half Truth. It's going to be out on all streaming platforms in June. And then also, check out fossilrecordsco.com. That's our new record label, and hear about my work, Forrest Van Tile, Kevin Carducci, and Margot Silker, and listen to some good music from the rural outposts of the American West.
Love it. Absolutely on my list of things to do as it is with the listeners now. And we do appreciate you taking some time to hang out with us tonight. Thank you for the wonderful movie and the wonderful work. We're excited about what's to come. Many, many thanks, Avery Hellman, for joining us today on The Big Show. Be sure to check out the show notes at rootsmusicrambler.com for links to all of the Ismay music and all of Avery's other music and related projects. Let's go out with another of Ismay's Lucinda Williams covers. This one's also done live and just happens to be one of Francesca's favorite Lucinda Williams songs. This is Am I Too Blue by Ismay with help from Charlie Sexton, Los Tex Maniacs, and Warren Hood. Be sure to stick around. Our Picking the Grinning segment's coming up next. This is Roots Music Rambler.
Too blue for you? Am I too blue? Then I cry like the sky sometimes. Am I too blue? Is the night too black? Is the winter out? Is it at your back? Have you had enough?
All right. How about that? What a fun, interesting interview and person and project. And oh my goodness, I'm so excited for her new album. And the movie's fantastic. I mean, I was serious on the show, guys and gals. I literally finished it like 45 minutes before we started recording, and it's really good. I'm a documentary guy,
Right.
so I like documentaries, but it's really good. Mary Gaucher's in it. Oh my God, it was so good.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah. I concur. If you have any, like I think people who may not even be huge fans of Lucinda Williams can take something away from that movie.
Oh, yeah.
Like we talked about in the beginning in the intro, just it's all a part of the human condition, and that
Mhm.
is talked about a lot in the documentary. And it's like where Avery was coming from with, her intention with that documentary. It is something that all of us can relate to in some way. So,
Yeah.
I highly recommend checking it out, Finding
Yeah.
Lucinda.
Absolutely. Finding Lucinda, I found it on both YouTube and Apple TV. And it's available for rent. I think it's $3.99 or something like that to rent it.
Uh-huh.
And then it's not much more expensive to just purchase it, but it's well worth whatever the investment is that you need to make to watch this thing. It's a very, very good exploration. I wholeheartedly agree with Frank. Even if you're not necessarily a Lucinda Williams fan, you're going to get something great out of this thing, because it's really more about finding yourself as an artist, finding yourself as a creative spirit. And that alone makes it well worth the watch. So Finding Lucinda. Check it
Woohoo!
out from Avery Hellman. There we go. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's time once again for the part of the program that at least two people love more than anything. And that are the people that we are choosing for our Picking the Grinning segment. Two people each show, or two acts, or whatever, are like doing cartwheels because we pick them and recommend them to you to go listen to. And that's what we do here on the Picking the Grinning segment. And so I am going to do the honorable thing, not the honors, and let Miss Francesca go first this
Oh,
time.
well, thank you. My pick, and just happens to really align with Avery's vibe and Margot's vibe, right? Like talking about the American West and the cowboy poetry thing. So my pick is Charlie Pride, and talk about a cowboy, right? I mean, he
Yep.
lived in Montana. He was a baseball player. He played in the Negro League. Like, what is not to love about Charlie Pride and his music? So I came upon his music later in life, and it was thanks to Sunvolt. Because they did a live cover, a live version of "Is Anyone Going to San Antone,"
Mhm.
and I just loved it. And then I did some research, and this was in the very early days of the interwebs, and maybe even before. I don't even know. But I found out that it was first done by Charlie Pride, and then I took it from there, and I just started listening to everything. And then come to find out, like, both my parents are like, "Oh yeah, we like Charlie Pride." I'm like, "Oh, well, why didn't you tell me about him when I was younger?" Maybe, who knows what could have happened. So yeah, Charlie Pride, good stuff.
There you go. Love me some Charlie Pride, man. He's it's one of those guys who he'll pop up on like Outlaw Country or whatnot every now and then. And I'm like, oh yeah, turn that shit up. That's some good stuff. So good choice. Charlie Pride is our first pick in the grinning. I don't know if he'll be doing cartwheels hearing that, because I don't believe he's still with us anymore. I think he passed
No,
away a few years ago. But
he did in 2000.
yeah. So, but anyway, Charlie Pride music lives on forever. Go listen to all of it. You'll thank us. All right, my pick this week is, I got to thank the old interwebs for this. So all of my doom scrolling on the TikToks and the Instagrams and all that good stuff, I come across because I follow and interact with a lot of musicians and artists. I get fed a lot of musicians and artists, which I love because it helps me discover new folks. And I discovered someone new recently. They've been around for a few years. They've got a couple albums out, but I had never heard of Kind-Hearted Strangers is the name of the band. They call themselves, or at least the internet calls them, an American rock and roll band, currently based in Nashville, Tennessee, originally formed in Colorado by songwriter Mark Towns, a Richmond, Virginia native. So
No.
there's all sorts of confluences coming together there. But I saw them doing a cut of a relatively new song. It's a live song. It's, I think, their latest single that they've released on the old Spotify's is called "Hey Johnny," and it's recorded live at Half Step, whatever that is. I'm assuming it's a bar. But I saw it, and I saw them playing it, and I'm looking at these guys. I'm like, okay, this reminds me of my favorite types of bands, my kind of like honky tonk, free spirit, just fun, like Silverado or Jason Scott and the High Heat. They fall into that category. At least they did with this cut that I saw as it was flying by. And so I started exploring some of their music, and I really dig these guys. Kind-Hearted Strangers is the name of the band. They're out of Nashville. They have a relatively new single out that I just talked about, and I think they've got an album coming, I
Okay.
believe is what I saw somewhere. I could be wrong on that, but they've got good music on Spotify, so check those guys out. Kind-Hearted Strangers is my pick in the grinning for this episode.
Sounds great.
There you go. Think we've done a pretty nice little job tonight with our show.
I think so. I mean, I'm a little biased, but I
We
think
did all right. We
yeah.
talked about some good songwriters, gave some people some recommendations there they may not have heard of. We had a wonderful visit with Avery Hellman and talked about Finding Lucinda. And now we've got a couple good recommendations for people. So I think our job here is done.
I was just thinking that same line and I was going to say it, but you beat me to it. How about that?
Actually, what she was really thinking was, shut up, fat man, I gotta pee. Roots Music Rambler is a production of Falls and Partners, copyright 2026. Our theme music is Sheepskin and Beeswax by Jen Decorum.
Oh,
Join us online at rootsmusicrambler.com and make sure you mash that subscribe or follow button so you remember to join us for the next hoedown and throwdown. She's Frank.
And he's Falls.
And whatever you do, kids, ramble on.